So I wanted to make a quick video about something that I realized this a long time ago when I became an anarchist, or when I exited the cult of statism, or whatever, however you want to put that. But there's no such thing as constitutional rights. It's a nonsense term, nonsense pairing of words here. At least in the context that it's used. I mean, it basically in every context that it could ever possibly be used, but maybe in a different type of society where constitution means something else, or it's a different type of charter or something, but even then, saying right, it's kind of it's not really the right term. So, I mean, the reason that there's no such thing as constitutional rights, it's the same reason there's no such thing as legal rights or civil rights, which, I mean, all of that's basically the same concept, These are things that the state says you have the right to do, basically, and what the state says you have the right to do has no bearing on whether or not you have the right to do something, So, I mean, that's a completely insane belief system, which is the belief in statism, and that's, basically a lot of what I talk about. But this particular thing, I mean, it's all the same logic and all the same thing, right? It's, can you delegate a right you don't have, and so on and so forth, like Jan Helfeld and Larkin Rose talk about. And a lot of, some other people, like Jan Helfeld still doesn't even get the implications of what he says. Unfortunately, I gotta say it, it's the truth. He still believes in government. He thinks that somehow there can be an agency that does these certain things and that it's not violent. And, if an agency did certain things and wasn't violent, didn't coerce people to pay it for it without their consent or contract, then it wouldn't be a state. I mean, it might do a lot of the same things. Like, it might be the only group that manages the roads in the area, but as long as it's not coercing people to pay and so on and so forth, regardless of their consent, it's not a state. It's either a service provider or it's a private owner of those particular roads. Which is how the state acts anyway, even though they call it public, yada yada. The state makes the rules. The state says you can and can't drive on it according to certain stipulations, and so on and so forth. So, but the only type of rights there are just rights, or human rights. I sometimes use that term too. But to me that's redundant. But I use that in conversation to differentiate when people believe in legal rights, which are nonsense. These are. One way you could put it is that your legal rights are your rights that the state recognizes that you have, and then therefore does not infringe on those activities, which would be a good thing as long as they're actually recognizing real rights, and not saying that now people, because here's the whole problem with belief in government is that they think that you can have a legal right to do something that you don't have a human or moral or normal right to do. That's the whole problem in just, sense. Because they think that, if you ask any statist basically, if the government gave people the right to own slaves, to just go around and catch people and enslave them and whatnot, and they'll say yes. Most of the time, pretty much 98, 99% of the time, they'll say yes, because that's the belief, is that government has the right to enslave people, basically. Government is slavery, but